Beggars in Spain by Nancy Kress, published in 1991, is a Nebula Award-winning novella about advantaged children genetically engineered to not sleep. This is a novella that reads very quickly, and if you can overlook characters, dialogue, and science that doesn't at all times live up to what you might expect from an award-winning book, you'll find a page-turner that raises interesting questions about human decency, envy, discrimination, and the responsibility that high achievers, high producers, have to low producers. Let me know in the comments if you have read Beggars in Spain, if you liked it or not, if you found deeper meaning or symbolism in it, or if you haven't read it, but you intend to. I recommend Beggars in Spain if you like science fiction that imagines advances and innovations in human bioengineering. That is the extent of the science fiction in the book. I recommend Beggars if you find intriguing the questions that I stated in the opening about the ethical responsibility of advantaged high producers to everybody else, the lesser advantaged. I recommend Beggars in Spain as a very easy read and a palate cleanser between heavier reads. This spoiler-free review will include enough to enjoy for those who've already read this book, as well as introduce the novella to those of you who are considering reading it, and you don't want me to give anything away. There aren't any really big aha moments to spoil, so feel free to watch most of the video. In my 5 likes and dislikes section at the end, I'll really dig into specific moments of the book that I think make or break it, saving anything spoilerly for just the very end. Right out of the gate, Beggars in Spain lays it out. Certain individuals, because of new bioengineering technology, can have their genetic code altered prior to birth to eliminate the need for sleep. In this imagined world, technology already exists to allow would-be parents to determine things like gender, eye color, and other physical and health attributes. The idea of creating sleepless children, however, it's not well known. There have been a number of children who have received this coding, and the experimental project and related research are still in the early and confidential stages. Enter Roger Beasley, one of the wealthiest men in the world, with designs of raising a daughter with every possible advantage that he can give her. Of course he's going to have access. From the moment that Roger Camden is introduced, my confidence in the writing drops significantly. Camden speaking to the doctor, "I don't want to make threats at all. Believe me, I don't. I just want this marvelous advancement for my daughter." Then continuing and disregarding the doctor's objections, instructs the doctor to set up a meeting for him to just talk to the board of directors. "Just let my personal assistant Diane Clavers know the details. Anytime that's best for you." Oh, you must be so rich that you have a personal assistant, Diane Clavers. By all means, let me, the doctor, set up your meeting with all of the board members. Not only is the dialogue not my cup of tea, the characters feel like a not richest person in the world's cartoonish view of the uber wealthy and how these types of meetings happen. Also, let me read you this passage, still in the first 5 pages of the book. Here's the board meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready to start. Perhaps introductions are in order. Mr. Roger Camden and Miss Camden, of course, are our clients. Mr. John Jaworski, Mr. Camden's lawyer. Mr. Camden, this is..." And we get several other names, full names, most of whom we will never hear from again. To me, this was absurd. This is a 150-page book, and how much time is spent on a roll call of irrelevant characters that have no bearing on this story? This is like when I started this channel and the first 2 minutes of each of my videos was superfluous nonsense that none of you care about. I swear this review will not just be a slam of the book, but I have to weigh in once more on early dialogue and character development. The only 2 important to the story characters from that long roll call are Mr. Camden and Dr. Susan Melling. There's an exchange between these 2 clearly meant to establish for the reader a mutual respect for one another, as well as to elevate Camden as not just a wealthy guy, but one who is sharp, prepared, quick, and immensely impressive. The main plot points in the novella are that technology exists that enables children to forgo sleep, and Roger Camden wants this technology for his daughter. We, the readers, are educated about sleep and the biologic purposes for sleep and how it's reasonable to assume that this sleepless technology basically holds water. The info dump on this, to me, feels like something that a freshman from the movie Good Will Hunting might regurgitate at the bar following day 1 introduction to sleep physiology class. How about these apples? I'm not buying it. As excited as Camden and Dr. Melling get going tit for tat and energetically finishing each other's sentences, demonstrating their familiarity with and mastery of the research and science. I can't stop rolling my eyes. Here's Camden. What about the need to dream? Melling. Not necessarily a leftover. Science, science, science. Camden. What about neural repair? Science, science, science. He was testing her. Susan gave him a full lavish smile. Camden. What about release of growth enzyme? Susan looked at him admiringly. Alright, that's enough of that. I do like the idea of people being sleepless, and I really wanted this to get better. And it did. With the rough start and questionable dialogue and more questionable science, the novel hits its stride. Most interesting is the conflict between the sleepless, who reap the reward of all the extra study, learning, training, practice time gained while sleepers sleep, and the sleepers who resent the sleepless because of their unfair advantages. There is a lot to read into this, especially when you consider this relative to some of the issues society is wrestling with today when it comes to education, athletics, and other arenas. This book also feels like a beginner's guide to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. There are several parallels, including productive and accomplished characters weighing their responsibilities and desires to share the fruits of their labor, so to speak, with the non-sleepers who, for one reason or another, they feel may want to segregate themselves from. Because of the similar theme to Rand's controversial work, I'm kind of eager to find out if the author will echo Randsian ideas throughout, or if the book will deliver a rejection of individual self-interest and present a different idea about the responsibility of highest producers to everybody else. I believe there's room in this novella for different readers to land on different feelings about what Kress's ultimate message is in this regard. Where Beggars differs from Rand's work, besides prose and a less black and white perspective, is that the social and economic examinations are much less of a deep dive than they are in Atlas Shrugged. Shrugged obsesses over fairness themes and exploring what producers and innovators owe to non-producers. Where Beggars is more dynamic is that it looks, albeit less substantively, at some of the same things, but also asks, what is the point of a life of achievement and the value of being a strong producer without also experiencing emotion, caring, kindness, love, and charity? Most working in Beggars' favor is that it is a page-turner, and I couldn't wait to see where it ended up. The wait for my 5 likes and 5 dislikes is over, so here they are, still spoiler-free until I tell you otherwise. Dislike number 1, the opening scene when Roger Camden launches into a near monologue about how powerful he is and how much he knows and his subtle threats. It's all just so monologue-y. It reminds me of my screenwriting class in college and the professor warning the class about long bouts of dialogue that would likely bore the reader. This wasn't boring, it just felt like the author was just way too eager to show how powerful this rich guy was. Unfortunately, it turned him into a not ridiculously rich person's caricature of an elite. Dialogue is also an issue throughout. Dislike number 2, early in the book when the main premise of eliminating sleep is presented in infodump fashion, I'm having difficulty buying in. I'm just not sold. Dislike number 3, this is in part due to expectations, but I was expecting a heavier read. While I haven't come across anything suggesting this to be a young adult novel, it is what it feels like, at least for a little over the first half of the book. I don't mean that to be pejorative. The book often presents intellectual arguments for Laisha to engage in with her contemporaries or even the adults, and what's frustrating is that they are generic and are only presented but not explored deeply. The sails are completely devoid of wind. There's even a section where Leisha says to Tony, okay, let's have it out and get all the way deep into this. They don't. Dislike number 4, the characters as written give no indication through dialogue or action that they are advanced or brilliant or advantaged or gifted or superior. The only reason that we know is because the book tells us that they are. That flaw in the writing is too hard to overlook. Dislike number 5, it feels as if characters are forgotten and then out of nowhere they appear back in the story. Instead of feeling organic, it feels as if they're just randomly thrown back in when there's space for them. Also, the story begs for characters to have chemistry with one another. Whether they be friend or foe, the only relationship that evokes any emotion is the one between the two sisters. Leisha's chemistry with any of her fellow sleepless love interests and even her father is completely non-existent, and it's not for lack of trying. Like number 1, nearing the end of the book, scientific questions, while still under-considered by the cast, become more interesting and make good food for thought for the reader. Considering sleeplessness as a dominant passed-on gene is interesting, as is the idea of dissecting the brains of the deceased sleepless to see what a life of no sleep has done to the brain. Like number 2, it was sort of interesting to compare this to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. What do producers owe to non-producers? And the scenario of the 100 Beggars in Spain. Comparing the two books was fun enough, whereas Atlas Shrugged gets deeper into the trenches. Beggars in Spain is more dynamic in the realm of weighing things beyond just how much can you produce, achieve, and innovate. It at least takes the time to suggest the question. Again, I said this already, what is the point of a life of achievement if there's no emotion, caring, kindness, and love? Like number 3, fetal bioengineering is an interesting topic. Not just the sleep hacks in this story, but the greater considerations about scientific ethics that are very timely. Is it ethical to manipulate genes to select gender, skin color, sexuality, hair color, etc.? Like number 4, this is a bit of a backhanded compliment. I was able to enjoy this read despite all of the flaws that I pointed out, and I'm also glad that this was only 150 pages. If it had been 300 or more pages, I think that the things that frustrated me might have been more overwhelming. Like number 5, the book shines a light on diversity, how we treat others, discrimination. These themes finding an audience is always a good thing. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read.
All I need is a tutor and no sleep. So good night, you can't compete. I still need you, but my privilege made you move. Sister, tell me what to do.